Councilor Green. I thought I saw Councilor Driscoll as well. Yes, Councilor Driscoll. I don't know if I'm not seeing other. Oh, Pro Tem, Khalid Bey. Good to see you. I think that's it. Raynette, can you hear us?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, let's get going. I think time is of essence. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Oh, you want me to get started? Did you?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you, counselors, for joining us this afternoon for the CRB budget hearing. When a lot of things going on in our country at this point in time and in our community, but we know we have to remain focused on the task at hand. So the Citizens Review Board, following with regard to its 2019-2020, we received less complaints than we had received. Yep.
Right.
Yes.
I don't know, you coming in and out. Is it just me or?
Okay.
Our signal is breaking.
There's a bad connection.
Yeah.
Okay, give me just 1 second. I'm gonna remove one of the connections.
Okay.
Is that better?
Yes, for now, yes. Yes.
Okay. All right, I apologize. So typically the CRB receives about 100 complaints a year, and last year we received 46 complaints, which was down, as we know, due to the pandemic. Typically, we receive many complaints from people just walking in off the street to come and discuss their interaction with us related to the police. So I do believe that because the building was closed to the public for a number of months due to the pandemic, that is the reason why we received less cases. In terms of the number of cases that the CRB was able to process during that time, we processed a total of 65 cases. In the year of 2020, 25 cases were sent to a hearing, 2 were tabled for board inquiry related to sealed records and the requirements related to that, and also for the Office of Professional Standards to further complete their investigation. 38 cases resulted in no hearing voted by the board, and 4 cases were closed due to the lack of communication between the board and the complainant. And that many times is based upon how long it has been taking for these cases to be investigated. The complainant's address has changed, complainant's telephone number has changed, they may be incarcerated and we are unable to locate them. And so therefore, based upon the way that the ordinance is written, it's difficult to proceed when we are unable to find a complainant. We also had 7 cases that were filed which were outside of the CRB's jurisdiction. And that means that either the agency that was involved was not the Syracuse Police Department, or there was some other reason for the lack of jurisdiction. The officer may no longer be with the force, things of that nature result in that. Of the 2 hearings that we held, we sustained 1 finding of excessive force and demeanor, and the other one resulted in a not sustained finding. So far, the chief of police has responded to all of our findings letters and has provided us with a reason why he has decided not to go with the CRB's recommendation. During the time in which we began to reimagine policing, there were several executive orders that were drafted. And in one of those orders, the police chief decided to write the CRB a letter in which it has decided not to make a final decision on a case until after receiving the CRB's recommendation. That did start last year, and we are beginning to see those cases turn around. With that being said, the Office of Professional Standards has added 3 sergeants to their department now, and also 1 lieutenant, which has increased the number of cases that have been turning around from their office. But that means that there are more cases for me to investigate. Currently, we have a private investigator budget of $5,000, and that budget, we usually use typically the entire amount of that, and then the remainder of the cases are investigated by myself. So typically our private investigator that we currently have hired, which is Freeland Investigation Services, usually investigates about 7 cases out of 100 cases that we may receive in that year. And he can investigate those cases that were filed in 2019, 2018, 2020. We try to provide him with cases in which will create a lot more manpower and investigation than we are able to utilize based upon time and other requirements. The CRB, as you know, the operating budget for the CRB is about $137,000. $137,950 is what has been proposed. The CRB did ask for 4 new positions, and we were looking to identify one of them as more of importance to us, and that would be to hire a full-time investigator, so that the CRB administrator, myself, would not be the only primary investigator of over 100 cases a year. And so we put that before the council, and we asked that you consider that as a priority for us. Again, the police department has seen that having more people in their department has helped them to investigate cases in a timely manner, because as we know, there has been an issue over the years for which cases have been investigated outside of the 18 months, which we know is a civil service requirement. And it has caused severe agita between the 2 departments and also with the community in terms of having people to relive these situations involving the police department over the years and not being handled in a timely manner. That is all I have to say at this point in time. And I will leave it up to some questions and let someone else.
Just for clarification, right? You said you are looking for $137,000. Does that include the investigator position, or is that?
It does not include the investigator position. The investigator position had a budget range of $29,000 to sorry. I apologize. Was 27, it was a grade 8 for that particular position, with a budget not to exceed 37,000 and something for that particular position. So it would add another 30,000 per se to the CRB budget in order to hire that private investigator.
So the 37 is the high end of the investigator.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes, that's the high end of that particular position. Yes.
Okay. And yeah, counselors, anybody? With,
Counselor, can I just jump in this part of it? So Renette,
Yes,
the
go
other
ahead.
3 positions, what were they proposed for?
The other 3 positions had to do with seeking out the ability to hire a data analysis. We spoke about this last year, and it was so that we could provide more reporting on the complaints that we receive and the types of reporting that we do. As you know, we are supposed to provide you with quarterly reports and also yearly reports. And the data analysis, in my opinion, is very important because it does allow us to provide you with more detailed data. Right now, the way that the system works is that the cases are opened by my legal secretary, and then they open that file, and then we try to pull as much information, but the time comparison between the two would need to be utilized in a different manner in order to give you a lot more information than what we are providing, so that we can have more reports to the community, to the administration, to the council related to what we are seeing as trends related to the stops and things of that nature. And I don't feel like our reporting that we're doing right now is giving you all that you could see if we had somebody that was dedicated to that position. And then the other position was a community engagement specialist. Right now, as you know, the board is made up of 11 volunteers. And those volunteers, many of them have full-time jobs. So many times the community engagement piece includes myself, which takes away from my ability to do investigations, and also any training that we are able to obtain. So the other person was going to be a person that focused strictly on the community engagement the CRB was doing throughout the community. The next one was going to be a policy analysis. As you know, we make policy and training recommendations to the Syracuse Police Department. And in order to make those recommendations, we must, I must gather the appropriate information to make those recommendations. We don't have anybody that works on that for us from a policy standpoint. So then I am doing that part as well in order to make sure that we can make adequate policy and training recommendations about doing research throughout the United States on best practices, attending trainings and things of that nature. So most of the things that I was asking for are all things that are part of my duties, which we believe that when we're talking about how we can best provide oversight for the police department, it does need to be more than just 2 full-time people working in the CRB office. So those were the other positions. Thank you.
Just before Councilor Green, Ray, I see, as a parent, I see your kid there. So if she need anything, please, we all understand.
She's trying. She tried to steal my juice, but
so if you need to attend to her for a second, I'm sure we will all understand. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Are you all set?
All set, Counselor. Thank you.
Okay.
So, Raynette, if we were to hire the additional investigator, would this eliminate, I don't want to say his name, but Virgil's contract with us?
It would not, because we still have such a backlog of cases that it would take us a little bit of time in order to progress through those. So we would need to continue his contract with us. And that is the reason why we asked for an increase in the contract investigator to $10,000 from $5,000, because again, he is only based upon that budget able to investigate about 7 cases for us, which is less than 10 cases a year with that budget. But I do see eventually it would be able to limit that budget line for the private investigator if we are able to hire that full-time investigator.
Other counselors?
Yeah. So Raynette, let me play the devil's advocate here a little bit. So a couple of years ago, we gave the director a raise because of the additional work the director did.
Okay.
But now, how do we qualify the extra pay for the director we just gave a few years ago?
So you qualify that because you still have the director as the primary investigator. Even when you hire an investigator, we are still going to have to review the investigation done by that investigator. So still, based upon the legislation, I am still going to have to review their work. So therefore, it's not as if now we hire this investigator and I no longer have to review that report. I'm still doing that part. And I'm still looking to make sure that we've looked at whether or not any policy violations have occurred. I'm also looking at that person's investigation to see whether or not they interviewed all the appropriate people, whether or not they have completed a full investigation in terms of being able to show videos, if there are video evidence, if they have also received medical records, if there is an injury that is being claimed. So you're still not alleviating in terms of the ability for the administrator to still review that. You're just taking out the legwork that I have to do in the meantime because I still have to do the other parts of the job. So I still feel like the raise for the previous administrator was warranted because you still have that aspect, and it's just taking away legwork so that we can still focus on other parts of it.
Well, you asked for 4 positions, so you're divvying up 4 parts of your job right now, to be quite frank, not just the investigation. And just as a point of information, the CRB is a citizens review board. It's not a department of the city. And when it was created, the members of the board had an investigative committee. They did the investigation. Now we're to hire somebody to do that. It's as if we're creating an entirely new department and really taking a lot of the effort away from the Citizens Review Board. I mean, with this description, it sounds that at the most they'll only give a vote on something as opposed to being intimately involved. So, and now I'm describing what the CRB's intent was when it was created and how it operated how it was supposed to operate prior to now. But we're now taking those responsibilities of the members of the CRB, the reason why we appoint them, and we're going to hire people to do those jobs. And hear me out. This is devil's advocate, so nobody have a heart attack. But then what do you need the board for if you're creating a new department?
So what you need the board for is because one, the way the CRB, you're accurate in stating that the way the CRB is created currently, the board does not do any investigations. And we have actually heard about community members feeling certain ways related to board members being involved with the administrator going out and doing investigations and having a credibility issue as to what is typically going on. So that is the reason why that has since, that is one of the concerns that we heard. And so we're not doing that. And
let me stop you. See, the only ones who can make that decision is us, right? Because we wrote the law. And let me be clear. I'm not literally saying, that's why I said nobody have a heart attack. What's the board for? We know what the value of the board is, right? But I'm stating the fact that a big part of what you're describing in terms of creating positions was done by members of that board in various ways. I haven't heard any arguments from the community about, uncertainties or discrepancies with board members doing investigation. I haven't heard any of that. Not to say that it hasn't happened, but obviously as judiciary agents, we have to justify the money. I don't have an argument against the investigator, to be quite honest. That's valid about the legwork. I mean, I wouldn't want to do all that walking around either. And so I guess the question is, as I stated, at the risk of being redundant here, not more so about the board, but just it's literally like funding an entire new department with staff.
Well, you have to look at it as to what do we want to receive from the oversight agency? Do we want to receive status quo, or do we want to receive information that provides you with more information so you can understand what the board is seeing? we're talking about quality over quantity. And that's what we're trying to give you more than what you're seeing right now. And I understand where you may look at that as saying, well, wait a minute, maybe it's the staffing that we currently have. And maybe it's the setup in the way that we currently have. But I would tell you that we are working to the best of our ability with the resources that we are trying to work with. We do divvy up portions of this to the volunteers, but many of the board members that are appointed to the CRB have full-time jobs. And we have been down one board member for over a year. So then that lessens the ability for us to have board members to do some of these things that you're talking about because they work full time. So, and they are volunteers. And even when we provide them with the information to try to get them to understand the time commitment in which it takes to be an active member of the CRB, many of them have other obligations. So we are trying to make sure we still do what the legislation is calling us to do, but we're also wanting you to be able to see quality. We're also wanting you to be able to see where the budget is going and what in turn we think is your vision for what oversight really is.
Right, because we've been having that discussion for a long time. If you're going to bring up quality versus quantity, you open a whole new can of worms, right? One of the rumors that have existed is that Gillette Bay doesn't like the CRB. That's been the rumor because I've been demanding a return on investment, right? Mm-hmm. And I've expressed to you and then to your successor, my concern of people getting the wrong idea about what remedies the CRB could provide to their dissatisfaction, because that's what we've witnessed over the years. I always reference the guy, eye socket broken by the cops, standing in the hallway crying to me because he couldn't get a remedy from the CRB because he thought it could do one thing that it couldn't do. Let me add to that. I just prior to COVID, literally prior to COVID, I was in the bank. This gentleman saw me. This is now the first time after this was that 2017 case that was dragging his feet, understandably so, right? Which should have been solved in 2017. But this gentleman I saw in Syracuse, early 2020, I swear to you on my life, and he pointed me out, mentioned, that he recognized me. I recognized him, and he started crying. This is a grown man because he still, at this point, hadn't received a remedy. This was the thing I was always talking about back then. People coming with clarifying what, in fact, is the return on investment that the CRB is to provide, right? Making sure people understand what that is so they don't come thinking that you can be Superman and then you can't do anything for them. Right. And so people have to be clear about what the tool is so they know how to adequately use it. And so when you talk about quality versus quantity, that's what I've been questioning all along. Because what is the deliverable?
Right. But we have to point out the fact that for so long, based upon the issues between the two departments, we weren't given quality. We weren't even given quantity. We were not even given the information for which we needed to do even what we were established to do. So since we have been here, we have been working on those things. And that's the reason why you haven't been able to see the quality that you needed to see in your deliverables, because the CRB was not getting anything. And so as we try to turn the tide with these new processes in place that we have been able to create with the police department in order to get more quality investigations from them and to get them faster, I'm quite sure you will be able to see more quality over quantity. And with that community engagement piece and being able to get out there in the community and express to the community exactly
what I recommend it, by the way.
Absolutely.
Make that clear.
Yep. And so that's how we are able to do that. I mean, we have, as a board, I don't want to make it seem like it's just me, but as a board, we have tried to do a lot more community engagement to the community in order to get that word out there. We still have people who file cases, which we know are trying to utilize the system in order to reduce their criminal charges. We still have people who think that we can, in turn, give them we can give them more than what we can, but we are trying to give them what we can and with quality. And so with the processes being, changed and things of that nature and getting better information from the department, I think that we're getting there, but we still have a ways to go. But I understand your point wholeheartedly.
My point is, to be absolutely clear, admittedly, there's been no deliverable provided in the entire time I've been asking, even prior to you, until the community outreach and similar programs started, right? That's valuable from my perspective, right? But no deliverable, no tangible deliverable yet. Your statement was the department was uncooperative, right?
Mhm.
And so the logic is that by increasing your expenses, that somehow improves the quality of information we get. No, because you're still dealing with the same department. So I say this not really to challenge the idea of one or however many increases in position, but really to do the same thing I've done in the previous budget years to try to help the CRB provide that deliverable we need. One thing I always said, Raynette, and you remember, I said, if you could somehow provide a quarterly report on policy suggestion to the chair of public safety for his committee to consider, then we could back you up on things you do. Right? I've made that statement over and over and over again. I know it's hard to do for some reason, and I don't know the details of what those reasons are, but this is one way that we could lend support that, from my perspective, and it may not be the perspective of anybody else, but it's from my perspective that we could begin to see some kind of real deliverable or some real return on investment, right? Because unless we're actually changing the circumstances, unless we're actually doing something to improve the conditions of people who encounter the police in a negative environment or in a negative way, then we're not doing anything. There's an idea that we can do something, but people get disappointed, right? And that's the thing we want to eliminate. So I asked that question to be the devil's advocate, to say the same thing I've been saying. Let's figure out how to provide us the greater tangible. But I still offer that idea that I think that if you have policy suggestions, I don't care if it's 1 or 3, and you communicate with the chair of public safety on those ideas, let it come to us. Now, obviously, policy that, in some respects, as it relates to the mayor and his staff, runs through him. We're policymakers too. And if it's something that we can legislate, we'll legislate it. But the communication has to be there for us to lend that kind of support.
And I will tell you that throughout this whole entire process, we have been communicating. We have been inviting to meetings in which we are trying to get everybody to understand what the concerns and the issues have been between the two departments. Sometimes it happens where discussions occur, and then other times it doesn't. And so I respect everything that you're saying, and I understand what's happening, and we have an opportunity to improve on what you're saying. And so we'll give another valued effort and, getting those policy and training recommendations too, in hopes that a special, meeting will be called so that the CRB can relay that information to the Public Safety Committee, and that you get it in enough time so that all can attend. So I will.
It's not about attending the meeting more than it is about. Hear me out.
Yeah.
I understand you've been communicating, but there's been no deliverable. That's a fact. So what I'm saying is, even if the police are not communicating with you, right? The Citizens Review Board provides oversight for the police department. There may be other suggestions relative to communication that you recommend to the public safety chair if they are failing to communicate. You get my point? Anything y'all come up with, I'm saying, shop them to the committee and let us work with you on figuring out how to make it have some teeth so that people could get a real deliverable and we can have some progress.
I totally understand that, and I feel that the communication part has been there in order to attempt to have that to occur, but then the response has not been what we would see as being helpful. But we have to continue to be optimistic that we will be able to get better results in the future, and give you what you're looking for, because I totally understand.
I would say communicate with us. I'm not talking about that.
No, and that's what I'm saying. The communication has been there with members of the council to provide them with information as we go on. Meeting invites have been sent to invite to understand what is going on throughout this entire year and the previous years. So what you suggested has been understood and has been attempted, but there has also been some systems that are not working to the best of its ability. So,
All right, let me say this last thing.
yeah,
What I'm saying hasn't happened yet, right? Because if there was a policy suggestion, we would have had it in front of us. We would have dealt with it. That's the point that's being missed right here. It's a policy suggestion. Hear me out. And you know, you play devil's advocate. I don't want y'all to get defensive, but we need productivity, right? And so when we talk about policy suggestion, that has not happened. There's been no policy suggestion. Hold up.
okay.
Now, if it has, then what you're saying is that the Public Safety Committee dropped the ball, right? Because, you know, I'm pretty, you gotta let me finish. I'm pretty sure if Councilor Majok would have received the policy suggestion, he would have told the rest of us, you know, and then we could have worked on it. This is the thing I've been communicating, but somehow we're not meeting in the middle, which is why we're still not getting anything.
So policy and training recommendations from last year was provided when we provided the copy of our 2019 report. We had asked the public safety chair to review it and provide recommendations. In every report that we provide, it has policy and training recommendations. So that has always been there. We have not seen any movement thereafter to hold any type of public safety committee meeting, to hold any type of public hearing in relation to hearing what's going on with regard to the CRB. So I only say that as an attempt to show you that I hear you. And I've always felt like, and I've told you this, you know, before, that I hear what you're saying and I appreciate it. I appreciate what you have to say and that you hold us accountable. Those are one of the reasons why we try to do more than what we were doing before, is so that we can give you the deliverables, not just you as, you know, Councilor Bay, but you as the council, in order so that you can see what the CRB has tried to do with the legislation that's been provided. So I understand that. We'll continue to do that. I know everyone just received a copy of our report via email, and I look forward to the opportunity to have that meeting in the future whenever it is definitely possible. And if there is any need for any clarifications with regard to those prior recommendations that we've made this year, last year, and things of that nature, we welcome to it. And so I appreciate it. Thank you. No offense taken at all.
So it is something I want to clarify. So it sounds like that as a chair of public safety that I dropped the ball of recommendations. I would have to revisit that, because I don't recall anything being proposed to me to give to the council and I haven't forwarded over. So we will have a better conversation around that, Ray, and the CRV. And I don't know, when did that ball get dropped? We'll visit that. Anything else? Any other councilors that want to add more?
Just real quick, Councilor Joe. So,
Yeah.
Renat, in a perfect world, I mean, understanding that you've had to make a lot of hard decisions here to try and, I don't know, do the best that you can. But in a perfect world, what would the CRB need in terms of funding, positions, or anything else that you might be able to get from the council in order to operate at its most effective level?
Give me 1 second. I'm sorry. My four-legged friend was having a moment. I am sorry. Can you repeat that?
No, it's okay. I just, I'm just noticing that you had to make a lot of hard decisions here, right? You were asking originally for 3 or 4 positions. Now you're only asking for 1, right? And so my question would be, in a perfect world, right, what additional resources would you need for you to feel like you could put forth your best product?
I definitely feel the full-time investigator and also the data analysis would be perfect in terms of just the data that I believe coincide with Counselor Bay's deliverables. I know the devil's in the numbers and then it's in the details, and it will be able to point out, more about what side of town, what type of complaints we receive, pinpoint certain areas and things of that nature. And that right now, is not being portrayed in what we are providing. We are looking at information in terms of how we create a better website in order for complaints to be able to be filed electronically on our website and things of that nature. And all of those things take time. And I just feel like having those extra 2 positions, the investigator and the data analysis, will provide you with the quality that you're looking for, and also just be able to give you more information about what is really happening in the CRB, because I don't think you get that unless you read, when you read the report, and it's nearly not enough. And I just think that you'll be able to see graphs and numbers. You'll be able to see comparisons over the years, particular areas, with 50A being repealed, that opens up a whole nother gamut of data that we may potentially need to release. That is going to take some time in order to develop that as well, and to put it out there in a method for which is able to be obtained and also reviewed by other parties. So I do believe that those 2 positions would be of great benefit to the department as we move forward. And we know that, you want to see something more than what you see, while also being able to show, what the legislation has done over the years. So those would be my 2 dedicated asks. If I could make specific asks, would be those 2 positions. And the salary requirement for that other data analysis runs right between that same range, between the 29,000 and 37. And the special investigators budget was between 37 and 42. So that was what it kind of was. So you're looking at somewhere around a $200,000 budget, for which we have settled some use of force cases in the past for that amount. So just put that out there. Thank you.
So Ray, I guess this kind of goes back to somewhat of a question that we discussed before. It seems like, to me, as much as the other positions are important, the investigation position is what you see at the moment pressing the most. Now, as I have asked before, and talk a little bit more about it, what if instead of creating a position, you increase the budget of investigation? And I saw that you asked for $10,000. How workable is that? Going along the line of increasing the investigator position, I mean, contract and stipends and all of that, then actually creating a departmental position.
So in terms of the private investigator that we are able to utilize, he charges us $50 an hour. So I feel like budget friendly wise, it's better to have a salaried position, because then we know what exact amount we are putting forward, opposed to when we are at just this position, I have to kind of figure out, okay, how much might this case cost us for an investigation, and kind of do an estimate so that we can see where we can stretch that budget to. Where I believe when you create a salaried position, it's just that one item, opposed to having to then transfer more money, come back to you later for more money to be, allocated through legislation. I just think that a salaried position is the way to go. I understand that it does create the situation that it's not just that base salary amount, but you have to pay benefits and things of that nature. But I do think that in terms of a budget-friendly world, it is better for us to have a salaried position than to have just this, pot of money that we are looking to try to stretch as much as possible. To be fiscally responsible, I think salaried positions are the way to go. But sometimes it may not seem like that because we had one case in which I would say we could spend $2,000 on a case. So say that's one case. We spent $2,000, let's throw it out there. We spent $2,000 on one particular case. That leaves us $8,000 for the rest of the year. I have to then stretch and see how many cases is this investigator now going to be able to investigate if one case costs me $2,000. And we want the investigator to do a thorough investigation. So I can't really say, oh, I only want you to do this investigation and it must only take you $500 to do it in order to stretch the budget. Because that to me is limiting their ability to do the quality work that we desire. We previously had a private investigator company in which we were paying, and I felt as if I could have done that investigation. And what we're getting now from the private investigator firm that we're utilizing is quality work. And so I think that, it is kind of a toss up, and I can kind of see how it may seem like, well, maybe if we just increase this to $25,000, then we won't, we will eliminate some of the higher, portions of a salaried position. But I just think that in the long run, you get somebody really familiar with the CRB processes, you get them really familiar with the policies and training related to SPD, that goes a long way.
Now, Ray, I'm asking these questions not to diminish the work you do, because I do feel that it's important as CRB administrator to have time to actually do the work, which is around planning, so to allow you to have that time. Now, my question also is around pro tem question earlier. For us to be able to allocate money for the investigator, it was done with the intent that somehow that this $5,000 that was given, that it was going to be supplemented by the 11 board member. That work is going to be done, right? Which for me, from my understanding, that CRB used to have a position of investigator a while back. And the point of getting rid of it along the way, it also includes the fact that it didn't really warrant to have a position, considering that there are 11 members that could also be supplementing the work. So for us, I'm trying to understand also the logic of creating a position that would require the city to put in so much, because having $29,000, it's not just the only cost to the city, and city of Syracuse does not roll in money, So for us, I'm trying to understand that logic of creating a brand new position, which Pro Tem was able to ask you that earlier, and not relying on the 11th or the 10th currently board members that are doing the work. See,
so I would have to say
it made sense to be able to increase the investigation line to allow room for private investigation to also take place for the work that the board member couldn't do. That's what I thought the private investigator position was for, to give leverage to the board to do some of the work that they couldn't do.
So I would have to say to you that if in fact you are going to rely on the 11-member board volunteers, then we're going to have to expend more money for them to be trained in how to do investigations. That's the issue. So you have to train them in how to do adequate and appropriate investigations. Then you have to train them in order to be able to review policy and training things. That's the budget that you allow for training currently. That's all the things that I do. So I go to all the use of force summits. I go to the internal affairs investigations portion. Right now, the way the budget sits, we can't afford to pay for board members to get that type of training.
And then my
So
question
then
becomes,
I have to.
wait. And then my question becomes, what is the work of the board then? Why are they there?
So based upon the legislation, the board is to review the investigation that the administrator does or the private investigator does to then recommend whether or not this case is going to go to a hearing or it's not going to. But the work has to be done by someone who is skilled enough to investigate.
So
right now, the department is not providing the CRB with a lot of training. We have to go, and some people will advocate that we should not be trained by the police department. Some people would say that we should not be receiving any sort of training by the department. So therefore, we do have to seek out outside training. So therefore, when you're looking at that, now you're going to have to look at how do we train 11 more people in training that sometimes cost $1,500 for a training. Sometimes you're talking about $650 for a registration fee. Then you're talking about airfare if we have to fly somewhere. And then you're talking about hotel stay. The travel budget that we have allocated right now does not provide enough for 11 members to be trained, including the administrator.
My question become, Ray, then why didn't we have this conversation earlier on than now? Because here's the thing. The board was empowered to be able to take care of this organization. Yet at the same time, we didn't give them the tool to do what they need to do. Why wasn't this question raised early on?
Well, I would advocate to say that if the meetings have been scheduled on a monthly basis. We've talked about the concerns related to the processes and things of that nature in those meetings. Members of the council have been invited to attend those meetings. Cho, you and I have talked about the meetings that we have set up and also sent invites for you to attend. So in those meetings, you would have been able to hear these very questions that you're talking about. So then maybe a public safety committee meeting could have been called in order for you to hear more about this besides here at the budget time.
Let me, if I could, Councilman Joe, one thing's for sure, Rain, that the board members got lives, so I get that point, and I think you may have misheard what Councilman Joke initially said. He said, the investigator is taking on that responsibility, which it is more fiscally responsible to increase the investigator's pay than it is to hire somebody, create fringe, and establish another pension cost. That's not the smarter move from a fiscal standpoint. So I believe that was the approach of his conversation. Yeah, I don't think he was saying put it back on people who has wives and have kids or grandkids to take care of. That makes absolute sense. So I want to, and Councilman Joe, you can stop me if I'm putting words in your mouth, but I believe that's what I heard you saying. I think the thing that's tough right now is that sometimes, when you're dealing with a cash-strapped city, I'll use an example. I've made an argument for the past 5-6 budget sessions. The clerk can be my witness that the council needed to create 4 additional legislative aid positions in our office. We didn't do it because we didn't have the money, right? And just because there's a $126 million windfall coming doesn't mean we have it now either, right? So this is kind of the root of the reason why I'm asking the question, right? We didn't. Like when Councilor Majoke or Councilor Allen or before formerly Councilor Maroon would get called to 3 meetings at one time, there's no way he can do it. He takes a beating because he'll go to meetings for 10 minutes at a time, and they say he stayed his time there was too short. But we couldn't maintain the cost. And so that's really what the questioning is about. And I think we all have a passion, and certainly even, and a aspiration that the CRB be strong. Let me answer Councilor White's question from my perspective. In a perfect world, the CRB will be a disciplinary board that could hire and fire. That's a perfect world. State law doesn't allow that. So we have to find other ways for the CRB to be effective, and that's through policy, right? Through interaction with the person who chairs the committee itself, to provide us policy, and then we enact policy that you can't, right? We affect laws that you can't, and that's the difference. My argument has been based on the fact that the CRB has not used its real teeth, which is the council. That's the teeth here. And when people are always saying, well, the CRB doesn't have any teeth, and I'm talking about people in the street who come to it for help, we understand their frustration, right? And it's not anybody here's fault. We didn't, you didn't create CRB, and you work your hardest to make it as effective as possible, but it doesn't change the fact that there's been a struggle to provide a deliverable by anybody who's been there. And so I don't want you to wear that like, oh, this is only me that's having this struggle. This has been a conversation, as I mentioned before you got here, right? But the effort has always been to help figure out how to get there, how to justify what we're doing. Does that make sense? How to justify what we're doing. And it's really, for me, it's a request to you to say, help us in the justification of what we're doing. Help us provide a deliverable that the people can actually appreciate and say, okay, yeah, that's something I can actually use, instead of not everybody, but every once in a while when we get a phone call, when somebody say, hey, I thought the CRB was supposed to be able to do this, it couldn't do nothing. And then we have to explain that to them. So this is where my conversation comes from. Councilor Majoka, I apologize for interjecting. But I just, I wanted to say that from what I heard him say, I don't think he was saying put all the weight back on the citizens. I think he was saying that the smarter choice is to increase the budget of the investigator. I'll yield.
And I understand that, and I heard that portion of his argument, but then I began to try to explain, what was the reason for the board. So I understand that, and maybe I feel, I've worked with the private investigator, and yes, they provide quality work, but it is a budget constraint in terms of trying to figure out how many cases I can get for the amount of money that's being allocated. So, we happen to have a private investigator that has more than one other investigator in their office so that they can kind of divvy up our cases, but you still have to have a person who understands what the CRB is there for and what its role is and what we're looking for. So I get it in terms of maybe, looking at it as $10,000 to the private investigator is cheaper. I mean, logically, it does make sense. $10,000 is cheaper than allocating, $37,000 for a whole nother position, but I'm just looking at the quality of work and the quantity numbers of the investigations that we'll get out of a full-time person opposed to just the private investigator. And so far, what I've seen is that, we do get, 8 cases done, 7 cases done by the private investigator at a budget of $5,000. Now we increase to 10. Now we're maybe going to get 14 cases, but we still get 100 cases a year.
Thank you, Ray. Any other counselors with follow-up question? We have fire department following after this, so I don't want to hold everybody up. Any other questions, counselors? Okay, I think that will do it for us.
Again, thank you for your time. I really appreciate all the discussion and candid discussion about, the CRB and the work that we're trying to do for the community under the council. We look forward to having another productive year as best that we can. So thank you very much for the time.
Thank you. I also saw Clifford Ryan. Clifford was here I just want to thank him publicly for the work that he has been doing with OG against violence. That's yesterday he was marvelous in the case of the little Dior, and he was great pulling the community together to put the event vigil together. So Clifford, did you want to add
Yes.
something?
Yes.
Just for 1 minute.
Yes, thank you for that minute. Everything that Mrs. Relaford is asking for is of very importance to the improvement to which you and Councilor Bay are asking for. So I would encourage you to work with Ms. Relaford in that regard. And the board is there for the citizens of the city. And we perform many duties as far as the city is concerned. We do outreach work. We do police liaison work. We are working with the department in every aspect to try to help improve as far as the board is concerned. We understand, some of your concerns, but I would encourage you, please, work with Ms. Relaford in that regard, because she is working really hard, and we have made several improvements as far as us working with the department and as far as the citizens are concerned. We hear some of those same concerns that the citizens bring forth, because I'm out there in the field, and I understand when a person comes to you for help, and you're trying to give them that help, as far as that's concerned. So I say that to say, please work with Mrs. Relaford in this regard as far as the budget is concerned, because everything that she's asking you for is of vital importance to the improvement of the board. And you will see the results once she has given the resources that she needs to improve in those areas that you're asking her to improve in. Thank you.
Thank you, Clifford. That will do it for us. We are take a break for a few minutes, and then we'll come back with the fire at 4 o'clock. Thank you.
Same link?
Same link. Same link. I see Chip Man here earlier. Oh, give me a second. Jim, is it the same link? Right?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Same link. Yep.